Hey, what's up guys? My name is Yofi. I'm a 7-figure Airbnb arbitrage host, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys exactly the step-by-step process on how to start and scale your Airbnb business to 10K a month fairly quickly. Right? So if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Yofi. I started Airbnb arbitrage 5 years ago, and since then I've generated multiple 7 figures through this business model. So first and foremost, there's a misconception out there that Airbnb arbitrage is not allowed. Right? So that's a huge misconception. As long as you're in a city that allows short-term rentals and you get the landlord's approval, then you can operate an Airbnb in that city, right? And also, every single city has its own short-term rental rules. So if you're living in a city and you check the short-term rental rules and they don't allow short-term rentals in that city, that's fine. You can go to the next city over because each city has their own short-term rental rules. So now that that's out of the way, the very first step you want to do if you're trying to get into Airbnb arbitrage, you need to create an LLC. Because remember, we're going to be pitching landlords. We're going to be reaching out to well-established people. Right? If you end this video and you go contact the landlord immediately with no LLC created, with no business bank account, you most likely are not going to get a yes. Right? So the very first step is we need to create an LLC using LegalZoom.com or any other website that helps you create LLCs. Right? So my recommendation is have a professional name. Right? Have housing in the name. Have rentals in the name. Just don't have Airbnb in the name because that's going to give the landlord or whoever you're speaking to a misconception or a pre-assumption of what you're doing or what you're trying to do. Okay? After your LLC is created, you need to open a business bank account. It's pretty easy, right? All you need is the LLC, an EIN number, and your articles of organization, which is a document you receive after you create the LLC. And then you can walk into any bank and open a business bank account. Now, once you have the LLC and the business bank account created, you can now try and apply for business funding. You can apply in person at the bank, or you can apply online to any bank, right? So I always tell my students we're aiming to get a 0% APR business credit card, right? Because 0%, that means you have no interest on anything you purchase for however long the duration of that promotion is. Okay, so very important. You can use that same business funding, that same 0% APR business credit card to secure your Airbnb, paying the rent, security deposit, and even to furnish the Airbnb if you get enough funding, obviously. Now, once we have our LLC, we have our business bank account open, and we have some sort of business funding, we need to find a market we can operate in. Once again, you need to find a city that allows short-term rentals, and then you can start reaching out to landlords, right? So my recommendation is if it's your very first Airbnb and you're not working with a coach of any sort, you might want to start in your state, maybe even close to you wherever you live, right? So wherever you live, find a city that allows short-term rentals, and how you can do that is it's honestly just a quick Google search. Right? Go on Google, do the research, type in, does X city allow short-term rentals? And you want to find an credible source, any website that has .gov in the name, and just do some reading, do some research, see what cities allow short-term rentals, right? Some red flags would be any city that restricts how many days you can, sublease the property. For example, if you go and you're doing your research and it says this city allows short-term rentals, but it's restricted to 180 days out of the year, that is a city we're not looking for. That is a red flag. Right? A green flag might be the city allows short-term rentals, but it requires a permit. The reason that's a green flag is because 1, it allows short-term rentals, and 2, getting a permit in most cities is not hard. It's usually just an extra step, and you can get it on the city's website. You apply for the permit, you pay the permit fee, and then you're good to go. You get the permit within 5 days to 14 days, whatever it is. Now, once you find that city you can operate in that allows short-term rentals, it is now time to develop your landlord pitch and start reaching out to landlords. Your landlord pitch is one of the most important things in this business model. Right? If you don't have a landlord pitch and have a way of communicating with landlords and building trust, building credibility, explaining the business model, you're not going to land in Airbnb, right? So you need to take time to practice your landlord pitch. So a landlord pitch is going to be different depending on who you're asking. My landlord pitch might be different than yours and other coaches and their hosts. But like I said earlier, what you want the pitch to include or what you want the pitch to do is build trust, build credibility, explain the business model, and also reassure the landlord, right? You're essentially asking this landlord to trust you with their property so you can host your Airbnb guests, right? So make sure the pitch is practice. Make sure you know the business model and the ins and outs so you can handle any objection that comes up and you can explain to the landlord and make them feel comfortable with working with you. Now, once you develop some sort of pitch, you need to start contacting landlords, right? You can head to Zillow, and what I recommend to my students is make a list of potential properties you're looking to get into, right? Modern properties, properties that look good, maybe the rent isn't super high, and properties that typically would do well on Airbnb. And if you don't know how to check for that, I recommend using airdna.co and also going straight to the Airbnb platform and seeing how other hosts are doing. See what they're charging, what their nightly rate is, and then compare it to the rent prices you're seeing on Zillow, right? For example, if you go to Airbnb and you're looking in the market you're thinking about getting into, go to another host and see what their nightly rate is. See what it would look like if you got 15 nights booked. Okay, if I get 15 nights booked, I'm gonna make X amount. What is that compared to the rents I'm seeing on Zillow, right? If, for example, you want a one-bedroom apartment and you go and look at the competition in that same market, and if you get 15 nights booked, you're making $1,000, but then you go on Zillow and you're seeing the rent is $2,000 a month, it doesn't make sense, right? Because you would need 30 nights booked to break even, to make the rent back. So that's just an example, but that's what I'm talking about, going to Airbnb and seeing kind of what the competition is doing, right? To give you kind of a reference, right? So now once you get to Zillow and you make that list of potential Airbnb properties that, you would like to contact the landlord with, you're gonna start pitching landlords. I always recommend set a day aside. It doesn't have to be the whole day, an hour, 2 hours out of the day. Just call that list of landlords. You're gonna get a yes a lot sooner that way than if you call one landlord. Doesn't pan out, now you have to go find a whole nother property, call them, doesn't pan out, now you have to find a whole nother property. It doesn't work that way. I say make a list of 10 to 15 properties, call all of them. If you get a yes, awesome. If you don't get a yes, then go make a whole nother list of 10 to 15 properties and do it all over again. Now, if you're able to successfully pitch a landlord, the next step is you have to get the consent in writing. I tell all my students this. I don't care if they give you a verbal yes, they give you a yes through text. You need to make sure you get the yes and the consent either in the lease or in a lease addendum that you're going to provide, right? And if you don't know what a lease addendum is, think of it as an extension of the lease that you would provide to the landlord. And in that lease addendum, you're stating that you have permission to sublease the property. You have permission to list it on third-party applications, not just Airbnb, all third-party applications, right? So assuming you get the consent in writing, you are now good to go with the property. Now, once you apply for the unit, you get approved, and you also get the consent in writing and get a lease signed or maybe even a lease addendum signed. It is now time to furnish the property, right? I always tell my students I recommend Amazon, one, because Amazon has nice, affordable furniture, and the shipping times are amazing, right? Places like IKEA might have great furniture, but some of the things are overpriced and their shipping times are not the best. You might order a couch, it might get there 3 weeks from the time you order it, right? For our business, that's not what we're looking for. So I definitely recommend Amazon, right? So the next step is tricky. Pay attention. This is how I furnish all my Airbnbs, whether they're 2 miles from me, whether they're across the country from me, right? So what I do specifically is I order all the furniture directly to the Airbnb's address. And what I do is I have to stay on top of it. I make sure I have someone there ready to meet the packages right when they arrive or within that hour, right? What we don't want is we don't want packages sitting outside of our Airbnb for way too long, right? Packages can get stolen. The longer they're outside, you never know. It might rain, right? So we want to make sure we have someone ready or someone on the way to meet the package and move it inside by the time it gets there, right? My recommendation is getting a handyman from TaskRabbit, Facebook Marketplace, Fiverr, Upwork.com. And that way, when the handyman does meet the package and moves it inside, that same handyman can start assembling the things that arrive and start staging your Airbnb for you, right? Once we sign the lease, every day you're not live, you're losing money. So it's really like this, right? In a perfect world, you're signing the lease. That same day, you're ordering all the furniture or most of the furniture straight to the Airbnb. Within 1 week to 14 days, all the furniture is there. And in that 7 days to 14 days, your handyman was already moving the stuff in, assembling the stuff, staging it, and you should be able to go live within the 7 to 14 days, right? And then you have the remaining month to profit or worst case scenario, make the rent back. That is what we're aiming to do. That is how you're gonna get your first Airbnb live, and you're going to rinse and repeat until you're at 10K a month. Now, let's say your first property was a 1-bedroom apartment and it's doing 3K a month. Obviously, you're gonna need 3 to 4 of those same Airbnbs to hit that 10K a month, right? Now, when you reach out to the following properties, your second, your third, etc., you're going to pitch concessions, right? Think of it like this. If you have a landlord that has a property that's been sitting on Zillow for 90 days, every month that property is vacant, that landlord is losing money. So you actually have leverage, believe it or not. Maybe not with every single property, but if you have a landlord that's had a property sitting on Zillow, not being occupied for a very long time, I don't want to use the word desperate, but they could be a little desperate. So now you can pitch and say, hey, I really love the property. Before we sign this lease, are you open to any concessions? Because I would need some extra time to get this furniture into the property, right? How does 1 month free sound, right? Even 2 months free. Start with 2 months free. If they say no to that, say, okay, completely understandable. How does 1 month free sound? And from there, you can even say, okay, if you were willing to give me the 2 month free, I'm willing to sign a 14-month lease rather than a 12-month lease so you can recoup that extra 2 months after the lease, right? At the end, right? But in our favor, it works out because we don't have to pay the first month's rent and the second month's rent, and then the second month's rent will be all profit, right? The second month will be all profit because we have no rent due except for like utilities and small bills, right? So that's what I did my very first year. I got my very first property, and I worked with a landlord that had an entire building of apartments that were completely vacant. They were vacant for a long time. So what I said was, hey, the first property is doing pretty well. I am looking to get 10 Airbnbs in your building. How would you feel if we were to take 10 on, and in return you give us 2 months free so we can take the 10 on a lot sooner? And the landlord was all for it. Right, I scaled to 10 Airbnbs within the first, I think, 8 to 9 months. And the first 12 months, I was at 12 Airbnbs. And every single one of those 12 Airbnbs, I got 2 months free. So what I did is I paid security deposit, I furnished the Airbnbs, and then I didn't owe rent that second month. I would take all the profit, all the money I made from that second month, and I would put it into the next property. For example, if I made $3,000 that second month, I would pay the Wi-Fi, utilities, which would come out to probably $200, and then the $2,700 I got, I would put into the next property, and I would rinse and repeat, and that's how I scaled super fast my first year to literally 12 Airbnbs in my very first year. So that is what you're aiming to do, and that's how you can get to 10K a month as soon as possible. I've had students get to 10K a month within 4-5 months of starting my coaching program, so it's definitely doable. I'm not just saying it to say it. I've done it. I've had students do it. You can do it too. Anyway, guys, I hope this YouTube video was helpful. I am going to continue posting free, helpful content to help anyone jumpstart their Airbnb business. Make sure you save this video, you comment if you have any questions, if you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe. Like I said, I will be posting a lot of helpful videos to help you guys out, scale your portfolios, start your portfolios, etc. See you guys in the next video.